Sit back, relax, and let's have a chapter chat. I'm your host, Jessica Foster, and we have a holiday treat for you. Not one, but two authors joining us today, Heather Webb and Hazel Gaynor. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
And they have co-authored two Christmas novels, Christmas with the Queen and Last Christmas in Paris. Ladies, these books are fantastic. Tell me how in the world you came together to write these books. Heather, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so Hazel and I had a debut novel come out a month apart. And we have the same literary agent, and she thought we could help each other out, learning the ropes of the business and maybe becoming writing partners just to swap pages, that kind of thing. And we hit it off right away. In fact, we worked on an anthology together called Fall of Poppies and did a little bit of a tour in the US for that. And it was kind of love at first sight. We joke about that.
So you became fast friends. And Heather, you live here in the States, but Hazel, you live in Ireland. So tell me how it was working just on the other part of the world with someone.
Yeah, I know it sounds crazy, doesn't it? When people found out we were co-writing, they were like, "How is that going to work? You're in Ireland, Heather's on the east coast of the States." But we have found a way to make it work, and actually, I think sometimes it helps us that we have the kind of time difference, because when we wrote our first novel together, Last Christmas in Paris, it's an epistolary novel, so written through correspondence of letters between two characters. And we literally wrote those characters' letters to each other. So it felt very organic, very authentic. I would wake up in a morning and Heather had been writing away through the night in my time, and vice versa. So it just was the perfect storm, really, the way we wrote that first book together, and sort of coming to this from being writing partners. When we met, we just really hit it off. We've very similar sense of humor, family situations. So I think it's a sort of a professional relationships that's come from that, but has, led to a really dear friendship. And we just have such a great time working together on our books, and then we support each other on our individual projects as well. So yeah, it's fantastic.
It's really fantastic when you can have a work partner who also becomes a friend. And I can tell that you just meld so well together, because the books, even though they're written by two different people, it's very seamless.
That's always nice to hear. We work hard at that.
Yeah, I'm sure that is the difficult part, because everyone has their own unique writing style.
We're both very communicative. So whenever there's, we hit a plot bump or something like that, or we need to talk about a character, we just get on the phone and hash it out. So I trust her implicitly. Hazel's a great writer in her own right, and I think it's vice versa. And so if she has a strong feeling about something, or I have a strong feeling about something, we listen to each other and we work it out. So.
And both of these are historical fiction novels. So talk to me a little bit about the plot. Of course, I've read Christmas with the Queen. I'm halfway through Last Christmas in Paris. But for those listeners that maybe haven't read them, let's give them a little teaser for both of these.
Oh, I get the difficult job. Pitch the book. Last Christmas in Paris, as I've said, was our first co-written novel. It's set through the 4 Christmases, the 4 years of the First World War, the Great War. And that was the premise for the idea is, what does that look like for a young woman and a young man as they mature, as they try to keep in touch through the written word? And it's, I guess, a love story wrapped up in that, the trauma and the horror of war. And it just was such a beautiful way to step into, that really difficult piece of history, and look at it in a really personal way, as if you're looking over the characters' shoulders, Tom and Evie, who we just still adore. We can't ever leave them behind. And then similarly with Christmas with the Queen, we have a young woman, Olive, who works for the BBC, and a chef, Jack, who is working in the royal kitchens. And their story really revolves around the annual tradition of Queen Elizabeth II's Christmas Day message, which was originally broadcast every Christmas Day from Sandringham House over the radio, and then later became a televised event, and still is a televised event. So similar sort of concept, but very different times, very different historical settings, and a very different premise, but just a really fascinating way to explore the traditions of Christmas and have that sort of dip into the behind the scenes of royal life, which I think we're all fascinated with, especially after the crown. So yeah, really fun to work on.
Oh, I am fascinated by royal life for sure. And I loved Olive as a character, especially as a journalist, and her having the connection with BBC. Oh, I just really connected with that.
Yeah, I think that was me, me living my unlived life, but sort of, having tea with the Queen and working for the BBC. I mean, that is my dream.
Right. I visited London for the first time last year, and I fell in love with it. And Heather, I know you like to travel, and you have an upcoming trip to London.
I do. Yeah. Hazel and I actually met up in London for Christmas with the Queen, and then took a train out to Sandringham to visit the house where the royal family celebrates Christmas every year. And we had an absolute blast walking the grounds and throwing 5 million questions at the docents. They're these very, very busybody, nosy girls asking a million questions. So we told them we were working on a book, and they were very excited about that, which was lovely. And we had tea, we had high tea to celebrate before we left. But yeah, I'm definitely a traveler. There is a trip planned next year for the fall for readers to London and Edinburgh with myself and another author friend named Eliza Knight. So always on the move if I can. It's just it's a lot of fun. So
Heather will take any opportunity to travel to, well, London, Europe. I mean, we've co-written another book called Meet Me in Monaco. So of course we had to go to the beautiful south of France and Monaco and Nice. So that was a tough couple of days, wasn't it, Heather?
such a hardship.
Well, that's what's so great when you write about other areas or a historical fiction. It really does give you a great excuse to travel for work.
Absolutely.
Yes. I think too, it really, when you go to a location, you get the kind of sensory details and just sort of locational details that you can't get in books, and you can't get it in Google Maps, no matter how good they are. And there's just, I think every location has a soul or a heartbeat almost, if you will, and you really can pick up on that when you go to these locations in person. So really, both Hazel and I try to travel to the locations that we're writing about. So
And so you said that you both had debut novels around the same time. Let's kind of go back to that time when you were a new author and take me through that process and what it felt like to have that first novel out there in the world.
Gosh, I think that's nearly 12, well, maybe more than 12 years ago for both of us now. And here we are. I feel like the wise old elder now at this stage, but it's incredibly exciting. I mean, for both of us, our debut novels came out after several years of, trying to write a book, going through rejections, which, I think is a badge of honor really for anyone in the creative arts, because you need to figure out really how serious are you about this. To get the knockbacks, to get feedback, which is often, very valid to help you improve your craft. But to then, get to the point where you get the yes from a literary agent, you get a yes then from an editor. And we were both being published with big 5 publishing houses. So it feels absolutely, for me, and I'm sure for Heather as well, the culmination of years of hard graft and, just you and your words. You don't know who's ever going to read these books, if anyone's ever going to read the books. And it really is a apprenticeship of commitment, I think. And,
Mm.
to then celebrate when the book comes out and reach other writers, you're sort of thrown into this other world. This is a second career for both of us as well. We came to it sort of later in life. And I think is therefore more precious because it's something we both really fought for and really wanted. And then to just have readers connect with your book is just amazing. It's ultimately what this is all about, is to get people emotional, invested in these, people, characters you've created and pieces of history that you're fascinated by. So yeah, sort of getting published is one thing, staying published is another. So, I think kudos to us for still being being published writers. But yeah, very special times, definitely, for a debut.
I think that's a wonderful way to put it. Do you feel the same way, Heather?
It was a hard won badge of honor to sign with an agent and then to get a publishing contract. There's just this enormous learning curve with writing fiction. It's incredibly complex. It's as difficult and as challenging as nonfiction writing can be. Fiction adds a whole other layer that's you can't really know until you're knee deep in it and deciding to make the commitment. But I absolutely love what I do. I know Hazel does too. Very passionate about stories from the past and how they resonate today. And sort of that feminist lens as well, bringing women up who've been forgotten, that kind of thing. So
Yeah, we love it.
Historical fiction is becoming one of my favorite genres because you really do learn so much. And I feel like a lot of historical fiction novels and the ones that you both have created, they pick up on things that the history books forget or just ignore.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think we're writing in this kind of golden age of women's history. For literally the last 12 years, I think there's been a real surge of female authors who are pulling women out of the history books and often whose history hasn't been told or have been overlooked. So, we think about, for example, the wars as a very male environment, the military honors, the battles, but actually often behind all of that, women have really crucial roles or were keeping everything running on the home front. And every part of history, Heather's, traveled into the sort of Belle Epoque era in the French Revolution. We've come all the way through the 20th century. In every piece of history we've touched, there are women's stories that have been overlooked, and we've both naturally gravitated towards that. And it's fabulous to, find these forgotten stories within very well-known pieces of history. And readers are fascinated. So it's absolutely fabulous to hear of a reader who's falling in love with historical fiction, because we've been beating the drum for years, and it's such an engaging, rich reading experience, and hopefully the history is really just there as a framework and you're just transported to this time and place. It's not a history lesson. It's all perfectly wrapped up in characters and emotion and adding color to black and white.
beautifully said. You must be a writer. Yeah, I have very little to add to that. We're both really passionate about this genre and love that you're really interested in it and it's growing for you. It's the learning. So I'm a former high school teacher of a decade. So the learning part is fun for us too. We love to dig in and learn and then, sort of portray what we've learned in the pages of the book through the characters' lives. So
How much research goes into writing a historical fiction novel? I'm sure it's a lot.
It is. And it does vary by book, based on sort of what our knowledge base is already. I've written now a couple of books set during the French Revolution. I've written three actually set during the Belle Epoque era in France, which coincides with the Gilded Age in the US. Some around the turn of the century New York. Hazel and I've written in the 50s. We've written in the 30s. And then World War I. So, a lot of that is all new and different. So there's quite a lot that goes into it. Lots and lots of books, of course, traveling to the location, documentaries, the whole nine yards. I create a historical outline as well, just to touch base with dates or specifics that I want to remember and make sure and kind of weave into the story. But you do have to give yourself a time limit, and you do have to kind of put boundaries down around it, because being people who love to read and who love to learn, you could just research forever and never write. So, I do kind of set up parameters. And Hazel, I think you do the same.
Yeah, and I think what's important is to remember you're telling a story. So the historical research is really your bedrock. It's enabling you to write authentically in that time and place, but to not feel like this is stiff and stale. Nobody wants to read that in fiction. You can go to the history archives. So what's brilliant about historical fiction is you learn as much as you can about your historical era, the event, the characters, how people lived their lives. And often it's just bringing very ordinary people's lives onto the page through that research. But often it's what you leave out of the book that's as important as what you put in. So you massively, well, I over research, but then it's only putting into the book what serves the story. That's a skill, is to learn what's fascinating, but save that for dinner parties and quizzes.
I understand what you're talking about having to figure out what you leave out, because as a journalist, when we're putting together an in-depth report, we have so much research, so many interviews, and then you have to decipher, okay, what do I need to put in? What do I need to leave out to tell this story and to have the viewer understand it?
We often have a historical note at the end of our books as well. So it's actually quite nice as an author to have all this extra stuff. And it's almost like, I keep an outtakes file of everything that I found out that was fascinating, but didn't go into the book. But often the author's note, the historical note, and I'd always encourage readers to go and read that, because it can give real context to some of the decisions that were made in writing the book, and other fascinating pieces of research that led to a decision being made on the page. So that's where we get to sort of tell you a bit more.
So ladies, I know that you're friends and you work wonderfully together. Was there a moment where you were like, there was a little tug of war with either of the books?
Oh, we're laughing because we get this question a lot, actually. They're like, when did you fight behind the scenes and almost break up? Or do you ever argue about anything? You know, I honestly can't think of a single time. I can think of times when I had serious family health issues going on, and then Hazel had the same. So we've had to either put something on hold or sort of help one of us carry a little bit more of the burden than the other for certain, like for copy edits, for example, at the end when you're nitpicking all the last little bits of grammar and such. But I think we don't argue about it. We just have a conversation, and I don't know, it just hasn't really happened. We're both really easygoing, flexible people who have the same work ethic. And I think that's key. If you're going to partner with someone who doesn't have the same work ethic and who isn't open to discussion, then it's not going to work. And I have to say that I know a few author couples behind the scenes. There's been some real drama, but not with us. We've been lucky, haven't we, Hazel?
Yeah, and it makes us laugh because people always want to hear that, when the band broke up, and how did you get back together? But we're just, I guess we're very professional about it all, and we love each other and care about each other and respect each other. So, there's no need for it to get spicy at any stage. We'll just talk things out, and we're collaborating, and ultimately we seem to always be driving to the same goal. So it's, how do we fix the problem? It's, how do we get through this plot point? And just understanding that, we each have individual lives going on and individual projects as well. And we've always come to the page with that. So yeah, disappointingly, we're just fabulous and we never fall out.
I don't think that's disappointing at all. I love hearing about those work relationships, because I actually have some of those myself, where I have partners that I work on special projects with, and really we don't argue, we don't fuss. I mean, if we see a roadblock, we just work through it and like, how can we make this better? So that's what I see in both of you. And I think that that's where the magic happens.
Yeah. And that's it. It's how do we make this better? Ultimately, we want to publish a book that has both of our names on that we're incredibly proud of. And it's how do we get the best out of each other and then out of our characters in the book? We touch every page together. It's a full collaboration. And that's why it's really amazing when we hear from a reader that it is seamless, that it seems to have been written by one brain, one voice, because that's what we're trying to achieve through the collaboration. So yeah, that's I guess why it works so well.
And as far as the collaboration, what made you collaborate on Christmas novels?
Funny you should ask that. So it started, we didn't set out to do that, first of all. It wasn't intentional, but our first collaboration together, Last Christmas with the Queen, was really a result of having worked on that anthology together set around the first Armistice Day at the end of World War One. And it was a collection of short stories. So we both decided there was more about the war that we wanted to explore. We were both fascinated with the Great War, and we both love books that are epistolary, that are a series of letters that tell a story. So we thought it would be really organic, first of all. And second of all, that's how they communicated back then. So we thought that would be a really authentic way to tell a story. And that book, people seem to really, really love that book. We so love that book. We wrote 2 summer novels after that so that we could just play and do something different. And then we circled back to Christmas right about the time that Queen Elizabeth passed away. Actually, we were in the process of working on the book, and it was a really, really poignant moment for both of us, especially for Hazel, I think, being English herself. But yeah, so we ended up really, really loving the Christmas landscape, and in fact, we might be plotting a third Christmas novel.
Please, please, please write a third.
Oh, okay then.
Yeah, they're just so great.
We both love reading holiday books as well. There's something, I'm a real autumnal fall season kind of reader. I love that, cozy, wrap up in a blanket by the fire. And it's a really lovely season to write in and to set a book in. There's that lovely nostalgia about Christmas and the holidays and how family come together. And it really lends some emotional depth to our historical storytelling. So yeah, I think we dipped out of Christmas into the summer and, sort of royalty on the Côte d'Azur, and then just sort of our hearts went back to Christmas. So it's exciting to think about writing another together. Yeah.
So I get that. Living here in Florida, people are all about beach reads, like the summertime. And I'm like, give me all the holiday books. I'm all about that. Even Christmas in July kind of person. I love it so much.
Funny, that's the title of the third book. How did you guess?
Yeah. But you're also working on independent novels as well.
So my 11th book publishes in May, and it's called The Hope Keeper, and it's about the curse of the Hope Diamond, the last woman who owned it, and the beginnings of women working at the Smithsonian Museum, where the diamond now resides. So there's a bit of intrigue. You get 1919 Washington, D.C. with real socialites. There's a lot of good historical context. But it was a really fun and intriguing kind of story to write. So I'm really excited about that one.
And I'm coming to the sort of end of my publication cycle for my current book, which is called Before Dorothy, which is my imagined life of Dorothy's Auntie M from The Wizard of Oz. It's a historical set through the Dust Bowl of the 1930s. And with the phenomenon of the Wicked movies having touched the same time frame as my publication, it's just been amazing to be part of something I've loved since I was a little girl, and to have taken that quieter side character of Auntie M and give her a full life. I've imagined her having come from Ireland. So I've touched in all sorts of my life. And it's just been amazing to see reader reactions and themed book club gatherings, and to be part of that sort of pop culture moment with Wicked. So yeah, that's been great fun.
Yeah, that is fantastic, because it really is so hot right now. It is trending.
It really is. Yeah. And it's lovely when that happens. I mean, books are written way ahead of publication. So the idea for this book, the early drafts of the book were written before that sort of first Wicked movie roller coaster of publicity started. So it's been really amazing to have loved that for many, many years and to see everyone else finally catch up with me. So that's been great.
And Hazel, with you in Ireland and Heather, you in the US, I bet it's also really intriguing to write books together and then see how they take off in the different countries.
Yeah, no, it is. It's interesting. The publishing schedules are a little bit different. So, for Christmas with the Queen, it was published last year in November on a Tuesday, and then the UK and Ireland and Canada, it was published a few days later. The cover was very, very similar, but sometimes you get different covers and different titles even. So, the trick is to not confuse your readers in different countries. And I know, Hazel, you've run into that quite a bit.
Yeah, I've had some sort of, well, once and never again. We had a very different title and a very different cover for one of my novels 3 or 4 years ago now. So since then, we've tried to, Before Dorothy was the same in each country, and even the covers have aligned. And the previous book, The Last Lifeboat, same title, similar covers. So yeah, it's because readers think it's a new book, and that's lovely because they'll go and buy everything you write. And it's like, no, it's the same as the one was out there. So yeah, our co-written books have all been sort of published similar timeframes and with close enough covers. So, and it's just amazing to reach readers all around the world. We've had foreign language editions translated as well, which is really exciting. So yeah, it's just fantastic.
It really is. And I have to give props to your literary agent, because your agent knew what they were doing when they paired you two together.
She did. She sure did, Michelle.
Props to Michelle.
Yeah.
Well, and I've realized with doing this podcast and these interviews that it really does become a family. And I love seeing female authors supporting one another. And I know that it's a difficult industry, but there's so much support too.
There is. It is a difficult industry because anything creative, it's just really competitive. There's only so many slots, only so many contracts, that kind of thing. Only, so many media spots. But they're your colleagues and your friends, and you want to see your friends succeed. So you do help each other out. And the business changes so much with technology every single year, and market trends. So we all help each other out. And I do think it is a really supportive community. I have to say, occasionally when you run across someone who isn't, I'm a little taken aback. I'm kind of like, who is this person? Why are they acting like that? Because it's pretty unusual. I think it's really unusual. It's a very supportive community. So
I think it surprises people because there is that sort of assumption that we're all sort of trying to compete against each other, sort of, so you wouldn't ever mention another author's book because yours is out at the same time and you want everyone to talk about yours. But it's like, what's the phrase, a rising tide lifts all, something like that. Yeah. And it really is that sense of, we all understand how much love and labor has gone into the book. And it's a really difficult process to understand if you're not doing it. So I think there is that sense of, I get it. I know what you've done to get to the day where your book is published. And if you hit the New York Times bestseller list, fantastic, because that means we all might hit the New York Times bestseller list, so there is that sense of, let's all shout about the hard work that everyone's put in. But it's fabulous for that. Yeah, it's a really supportive, creative, historical, particularly. I think there's something about that community. The historical writers really have each other's backs, which is, it's just a really positive thing.
Well, ladies, I've noticed that as well. So I love hearing you affirm that really is happening in the literary world.
Very much so.
Is there anything that you want readers to know?
I would like to say to readers about our collaborations, that they are, well researched and well written, but really we're aiming to bring a real sense of heart to our stories. And we want them to not only maybe feel a little nostalgia and learn a few things, but to walk away feeling like they know and love those characters. I think Hazel and I really set out to try to do that. That's what we remember in books that we love, I think. And at least for me, that's true. And so that's one of the things that we work hard to accomplish.
Yeah, and I think I'd add to that, if any readers are listening and haven't tried historical novels, historical fiction, for fear of it reminding them of awful school history lessons, then fear not. You're in safe hands. It's a totally different experience, and it's interesting that you said yourself you've started to really love historical novels, and it's often the case once you embark on that journey of that genre, readers just absolutely love it. You get so much with a historical. So, don't be afraid, and, come on the journey. It's a really amazing way to learn about different pieces of our past through emotion and characters that are going to stay with you for a long time. So come and read us.
Yes, hop on board because it is worth it. Ladies, I hope you have a fabulous Christmas season.
You too.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much. You too.
Thank you. And readers, if you have not read Christmas with the Queen or Last Christmas in Paris, do yourself a favor and read it this holiday season. You've been listening to Chapter Chat. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Happy reading.